Wendy, welcome to the show today.
Hi, how are you?
Good, you doing all right?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. We're super excited to have you on the show and learn more about um, kind of your expertise in holistic health and the food and supplement area of that. So, first, I mean, if you want to tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, that'd be awesome.
Sure. I'll keep it little, and then I'm
Okay.
sure we'll add somewhere in there later on. There's definitely like lots of pieces to it, and I
Uh-huh.
think maybe the most important is just that I've always been very passionate about people. I've always believed or had this core belief that humans are amazing and we can do incredible things, and we have within us the potential that is untapped for, I would say, for all of us. Really, I don't know that anybody really can say that at the end of their life they've fully given all that their potential is. And so it's always been a goal of mine to help people figure out what that potential would look like on a really great day, and then step into it and then sustain it over time. So since high school, I've been in the fitness industry and the wellness industry as a personal trainer, doing like supplement coaching, helping people with their diets just because it's fun. Food is fun to me, and who doesn't like to talk about food?
Right.
And it didn't really turn into a career for me, like a full-time career for me, until much, much later. But it really kind of came by way of being a health expert and then getting sick and then having some crazy experiences of my own, in that nobody knew what was wrong with me. So there was
Hmm.
this whole season of my life that was like really difficult and really challenging, but it was the greatest gift because there's no way to learn like sink or swim. And in my
Yeah.
particular scenario, my sink would have been death and my swim would
Wow.
be what I'm doing now. So I was pretty profound, and it gave me a lot of information, and it gave me the ability to see things from multiple different perspectives, so that at this point in my life, I don't really necessarily feel that I'm an expert on anything, other than maybe there's always so much more to learn. That's the only expertise that I have, is that there's so much more that we don't know, and and life is just an ongoing learning process. So I have taken what I learned through those experiences, through my time in the industry, and built a couple of different brands around it, and continue to build some brands around it, whether it's food or supplementation or health and wellness coaching, books, you name it.
That's awesome. So, I mean, so you said at one point you were sick and basically it was death or get over it. What, I mean,
Yeah.
do you care to elaborate a little bit on that? That kind of grabs me a
Yeah.
little bit.
So I had some random symptoms, like some bloating and some,
Uh-huh.
and at the time I was a fitness competitor. So I was really immersed in the culture. So it wasn't that I wasn't healthy by any stretch of the imagination,
Yeah.
but I started having some more life altering symptoms, like seizures, a mini
Wow.
stroke. I couldn't walk, couldn't stand, just like severe pain all over my whole body that nobody could really explain. Doctors couldn't explain it. So I spent a year going from specialist to specialist and doctor to doctor, and reading all the medical textbooks myself and trying to figure it out. And little by, as that was progressing, my organs were shutting down, things were getting worse.
Wow.
I was actually becoming immune to some of the prescriptions, that some of the pain medications they were giving me weren't working anymore. I was on Percocet and Oxycontin and Klonopin and all the craziest
Jeez.
prescriptions, and they weren't even touching my pain. So, and I didn't want them anyway. Like
Right.
that was never a solution. That was something that I did because I thought it was my only option. And at some point, I was in the hospital. My heart rate was like super crazy, and
Hmm.
they couldn't get it under control, and that was in addition to the other organ issues that I was having, and they were just like, we don't really know what to do for you anymore, so maybe it's just best that you file for disability, and you know maybe just get things in order. I mean, I was told by a couple different doctors that they just didn't see me living past maybe like 6 months if my body continued in this downward spiral that nobody could stop.
Holy cow.
So yeah, I mean, that was a sink or swim situation
Yeah.
where it was like nobody was throwing me a life preserver, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying, I mean, I was grasping at straws trying to find people who could help me. The best that they had to offer was prescriptions, and that obviously wasn't healing anything. It wasn't making me better. And even though it was livable, it was a terrible quality of life, and it certainly didn't promise any extension of life. So it wasn't until maybe 3 years after all that stuff happened that we found out what was going on. And at that point, I had already started getting better because I had implemented alternative methods. So I was doing more natural holistic medicine, which at the time I didn't even believe in. I thought it was all just,
Yeah.
and, you know, they found out later on that I had late stage Lyme disease, which
Oh, wow.
was something nobody really was talking about at the time. And especially because I was in Arizona then, and the doctors weren't really looking for that, even though I had spent some years in New York prior.
Mm.
So by the time I figured out what was wrong with me, I didn't really care anymore. I mean, I cared, but it wasn't I was just happy to be alive and
Right.
walking and not in pain anymore. So then it was like just great information. But because I spent so much time trying to figure out what was wrong with me, I learned about every arm of medicine, every condition, every disease. I studied all of them in depth because I didn't feel like I was getting to the bottom of it fast enough. So yeah,
Wow. Wow. That's crazy.
that was
But
kind of a wild ride.
yeah. So now, I mean, I'm guessing that's why you're more passionate about the holistic health now then. Is it because you've
Oh
seen
yes,
how it works?
yeah. Because I was
Wow.
on both. I think some people have like a beginning stage where they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I feel fine, and they're maybe not as aware or conscious of their living, and then something happens either to them or a family member, and then they're like, okay, that's it, no more of this, we're going, you know, more extreme on this side. I was extreme on this side,
Mm.
and then this happened, and so that gives you a whole other outlook, because
Oh, yeah.
you go, wait a minute, I'm doing everything right, at least I thought, so what have I missed? And if
Yeah.
I've missed it, then that means the amount of people that I've talked to from the beginning of this journey to this point in time, I've been giving them potentially the wrong information.
Mm.
So now I have to figure out what I did wrong or what I don't know before I even attempt to tell anybody else or advise anybody else or consult with anybody else, because clearly I've missed several boats. And so let me figure out how to do that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely something that sparked another level of passion and a different type, where it became more about not so much what was popular at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so if what was popular at the moment was an effective strategy, I wouldn't have ended up in the position that I was in, and a lot of other people wouldn't either. So then it became a passion about the individual and helping the individuals know how to proactively approach their health based on genetics, epigenetics,
Mm.
where they're currently living, what season it's in, what their biomarkers show, what their labs look like. And when you take that data and you apply it with the more bulky information,
Mm-hmm.
you get what's called precision wellness. And so that's
Okay.
what I do now, about making precise strategies for people so that they can feel their best possible and hopefully not ever have to go through what I went through or a lot of other people go through.
Absolutely. Wow. And so do you yourself through your business do these tests to get people's precision health set up? How does that
So,
work?
yeah, so what I do is because I'm not a doctor,
Right.
I do know enough people. I have a really extensive network of like
Okay.
the best of the best. So depending on what type of program somebody might want to do, I will create a strategy where I bring in or build around them kind of a team. So if you think of like an athlete, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, they have multiple different people in and around them that are contributing to their ultimate goal. So I do the same thing, but you don't necessarily have to be an athlete for that. You can just be you, and you just want to be your best you. And now you
Yep.
have somebody who's talking to you about your precision nutrition. You have somebody who's running your labs, who's discussing your lab results with you, and then sharing that information with whoever's doing your supplementation, who's
Okay.
doing your nutrition, and across the board, the different team members are sharing data so that you get the benefit of everybody talking to each other and also not having to interpret them yourself,
Right.
which is a whole other problem.
Yeah. That's really
Yeah.
cool. I'm just curious, do you see a majority of people have, or maybe they're lacking a specific portion of like the holistic health? Like anything that usually people are offered to add to their daily regimen?
I would say that the common denominators
Hmm.
are the simplest ones, which
Okay.
is awesome. Like why it's so fun to do shows like this or just
Yeah.
talk about it in seminars is because I don't even have to draw blood to
Uh-huh.
already know where I can optimize most people. So it's usually in your sleep.
Okay.
It's usually in the diet with just a few tweaks and in water
Mm.
and environment. So meaning real light, real air,
Yeah.
getting outside, things like that. So those can be adjusted for everybody
Okay.
pretty simply, just getting outside more.
Yeah.
If you got outside 4 times as much as you do now, it would make a huge difference. And
Mm.
if you slept deeper
Yeah.
and longer than you do by simply changing the settings on your phone to where you're not looking at blue light so late at night, so you're not disrupting your circadian rhythm, you're getting like the melatonin production, you're not
Mm.
staring at television, or if you are, you're wearing blue blocking glasses, like super nerdy things like that will actually move the needle significantly. And I don't think that there's a single person that wouldn't benefit from those little changes.
I agree. Yeah, I think the blue light's huge. My wife gets annoyed at me uh, probably a lot of the time because we'll go to bed and she'll have her phone on, and I'm like, "Hey, put that away! Like you're disrupting both of our sleeps." And so she's like, "Oh, whatever." But she's getting better. It's just funny that. But yeah, I think that's super important. Now, what is your stance on amount or hours of sleep, or do you have a stance on hours?
Yeah, I do. I still think that that's one area of science that we have it as correct as we can at this time based on what we know.
Mm.
So there's a lot of little tweaks you can do throughout the day through in different areas of life, time management,
Mhm.
mindfulness, thought life. But when it comes to sleep, there's just no hacking it.
Yeah.
Sleep is sleep. It just is a necessary thing. We shouldn't try to work a way around it. We should try to make sure that everything else gets worked around it
Mm.
to get in. I think 8 hours is a good middle ground. It might be a little bit less for some people. It might be a little bit more for some people. And the best way to determine that is to track your sleep and to really analyze it and to see the correlation between I feel amazing when I'm having this time of sleep. Like for instance, I might only sleep 6 hours, but if I get 3 hours of REM and an hour of
Mm.
deep sleep and my disturbances in my light sleep are minimal, that 6 hours might be sufficient for me. Whereas for somebody else, it takes them a lot more of the cycling to get into that much deep sleep or that much REM. So they might have to be asleep for 8 hours to accomplish a similar ratio, right, of the different
Yeah.
stages of sleep. So I think it's just really dependent on the person and as far as if less or more, but really I think sleep that's one area that I think we have mostly right, and we should
Yeah.
probably just work around that.
Yeah. What do you recommend on people tracking their sleep? Do you use something specific?
Yes. So there's quite a few new technology options out
Hmm.
there. I currently I wear a Whoop. It's like it's
Okay.
a little watch. It tracks a lot more than just your sleep, but you wear it all the time. It's tracking more data than any technology that's available
Okay.
right now. So it's got so much data on me. It's looking at my HRV, which is huge. I think HRV is so important. It speaks to the part of our body that we can't consciously tell you. I can't tell you what my autonomic nervous system is doing. I
Hmm.
can I feel a little nervous,
Yeah.
central nervous system, but the thing that reminds my body to for my heart to beat and my lungs to breathe, that's a whole system that we're not necessarily tapped into. So
Yeah.
HRV will help with that. But the sleep on it is great because it helps obviously, because it is adding in the HRV component, but it's also looking at your disturbances, your light sleep, your deep sleep, your REM, and it's breaking it down. And then it also has questions like, did you have drinks before you went to bed? Are you sharing your bed? Are you, different things that would contribute to an overall data analysis, right? Like, so that you can take the information and go, okay, I know that when I have a glass of wine or something before bed, my HRV goes down, my REM goes down, so you can draw correlations. I think that's the most important piece, is being able to get data that also gives you the ability to draw correlations between behavior and benefit or ill effect, right?
Okay.
So Whoop I like a lot. It's not even very expensive. You can pay monthly for it.
Oh, cool. And
I'll send you a link so you can add it to the notes and stuff too.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. And I'm guessing it connects to your phone through an app or something?
Yes, and awesome. It's so easy to use. It's easy to set up.
Cool.
There's still, I mean, like all technology, there's still some things that they're working through, like just bugs and stuff. But for the most part, I think it's the most accurate that we have access to now. And I've been using it for the last probably 6 months. It tracks your workouts as well. It tracks your calories. It has a lot of features that I think are really beneficial.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, definitely. We'll put that link in the show for sure. And I know that, like you said, you're big on the food and supplements and making sure we have the right nutrition. And I believe you created your own supplements. Is that right, or am I off on that?
Yes. So I do. I have a company that consults with brands to help them formulate some of their supplements. I have in the past done a supplement line or two. Those have either been sold off or have just kind of become irrelevant only because of other projects that I've had to pay attention to.
Right.
The hard part about supplementation is that consumers really are looking for an instant feeling. And the problem with that is you can't really feel your cells,
Right. Yeah.
So if you're doing something in the space where it needs to be done, which is at a cellular level, you're not going to be like, I'm euphoric, or that takes time for all of those cells, those individual like little mitochondria to be affected, and then overall. And then at some point in time you wake up and you're like, I don't know what happened, but I'm feeling a little bit clearer, and who knows how long that took, right? So supplements are hard because people don't typically stay with something until they have evidence via a feeling that it's working. So it's a tough space to be in if you're honest.
Yep.
If you want to just throw out catchy, things, you can make a lot of money
for sure
at first, but then it's a short-lived business model. And food, I do formulate a lot of food products as well. I have 4 brands that we've just launched. They were in more of a private label type situation, which is not stuff I really get to talk about or share because I'm obviously under an NDA for those things. But they've been in the marketplace for years and done really, really well. So they're about to be in the stores under their branded names. Those are coming out. I specialize in plant-based, not necessarily because I am fully plant-based, but I am about innovation, and I am about sustainability and creating solutions that are unique and helpful to an evolution of the food industry. So that's why plant-based tends to be the thing for me. And I also work on beverages and different elements of supplements. I've really gotten into the space of, again, it's all about precision to me. So one brand that I just launched is called the Next Generation Athlete. And it's not just for athletes. It's actually what I like to call professional athletes and business athletes, because peak performance is a thing no matter what you're doing. If you're a mom or you're an executive or you're a football player, peak performance, why don't we all want to be MVPs of our household,
Right.
So that's an exciting space for supplementation for me right now, is the customization, where you can get like your own blend of protein powders that specifically for your goal and your biomarkers and whatever it is that you need to accomplish. And then same for an athlete, or same for somebody who's just maybe wants to do like a Spartan race or something, or a corporate wellness entity where they're wanting to get more productivity out of their employees. So customization and supplementation to me is the future. And it's something that if you have access to all those raw ingredients, you don't even need to start your own brand per se, because everybody's going to get their own thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what would you, I guess, say to someone who wants to like to take the supplements or add things into their system that they've heard is good for them, and they're just going to Walmart or something and getting the generic ones off the shelf? What's your position on that?
Supplements are not regulated. It's why that you'll turn the bottle around or box around and always see a disclaimer. The FDA is not behind this or backing this,
Mm-hmm.
and that they can't make any claims about anything. All that stuff is for a reason. If there was anything wrong, or if there was maybe something that's on the label that's not really in the product, which happens a lot,
Mm-hmm.
there's no governing body going through and doing checks on it. The only time a check happens if somebody complains.
Mm.
So if somebody were to say, this doesn't make sense, the label says it's 50 calories, or the label says it has 100 grams of protein in it, and I don't think it's possible, and then they make a call, and then maybe months, a lot of time down the road, somebody goes and investigates, and the only way that consumers would know is it's just not on the shelf anymore. They wouldn't know that like it was wrong. So
Yeah.
when it comes to supplementation, I think it's one of the most important areas to make sure you have a trusted advisor. So that's like why, like on my website, I always put products that I love, or if I post anything on social media, I am always very cautious about what I promote, because I'm not just slinging products everywhere.
Right.
That's
Yep.
not my purpose in life. My purpose in life is that people can count on, if I'm making a recommendation or I'm suggesting something, that I've done the research that they don't have time to do, or the brain space to do, or they just don't want to do.
Right.
And that helps them, kind of navigate better. But just to go into like a Walgreens or hop into like CVS or something and grab something off the shelf, I'm not a huge fan of that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause I mean, it can be dangerous too if you do too much of certain supplements. And so just having that knowledge and background is important, or seeking that out from someone else for sure. So I guess, do you have maybe a natural, like a plant or something that you think is a really good source of some sort of vitamin or mineral that a lot of people could use?
For that, so there's a couple of things that the body does naturally,
Mm-hmm.
that you really can't get from like plants necessarily. And then there's things that you can get from plants that are nutrient dense, like micronutrients and so on. For that, I really love chlorella, which is a seaweed. Again, that's a very important one to source well. I think that I do have one on my website that I recommend, and there's a link to it and some discounts too, because it's not supposed to be cheap. And you'll see, if you were to look at chlorella on the shelf, you'll see one that's $9.99 and you'll see one that's $49.99, and there's a huge gap between there, and there's a reason for that, and it's a good reason. So not all supplements, though, is that the case for. But with chlorella, if it's cheap, be very concerned, because it acts as a chelator. So what it does is it attracts different heavy metals and stuff. So if in the process of being in production, or maybe being sourced from the ocean, depending on what body of water it's coming out of, you can presume that it's got some contaminants in it, just naturally because of where it is. So a clean body of water is really important when it comes to chlorella, and then a multitude of other things. So for that one, it has amino acids, it has digestive enzymes, it has, I think, pretty much every vitamin and mineral, with the exception of like a handful. So they use it as food for astronauts. Like it just has a ton of, it's like if there was one catch-all, I think chlorella is definitely one of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do any others? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I love mushrooms. I think mushrooms are very, very good. We're still, finally, I think they're getting the spotlight that they deserve.
Yeah.
And we're learning a lot more about them. They all have different benefits to different strains. I love Coriolis versicolor, which is a turkey tail. That's one of my favorites for the immune system and the way that it acts in the immune system. It's a modulator, which is something that we all need. We don't necessarily want an overly excited immune system, and we also don't want one that's just laying there doing nothing. So it acts kind of like the hall monitor of your immune system, where it makes sure everybody's pulling its weight. And it's got some really incredible research behind it as far as what it does for people with conditions, whether it's autoimmune conditions or cancer, but also just as a proactive measure during like flu season, cold season, these viruses and stuff. You can't really beat mushrooms in that case, or colostrum, which I love.
Okay.
I think colostrum is emerging. There's different molecules of it that science is getting a little bit more specific on. There's definitely one of those on my website too. It's called Fortizel, and it's got like the most profound, like the most, if there's like a superhero within colostrum, that's what's in that capsule. And so those studies, oh my gosh, when I started reading about that particular product, I couldn't stop, because it's just like paper after paper after paper after paper. And this isn't just the company's research. This is universities around the world globally who are researching into this and looking at all the different benefits. Everything from growing hair and nails,
Wow,
all the way to preventing cellular mutation, aka cancer. So
Yeah,
and there's studies for all of it. So I love that one as well. I think that
that's
one is
awesome.
pretty spectacular.
That's cool. I think it's so cool that like, just with my faith and everything, like God put stuff here that we can use to help ourselves,
Yes.
instead of trying to create and then make money off of like pharmaceuticals. Nothing against if you're in pharmaceuticals per se, but yeah, I think there's stuff here that we can use and better ourselves with. And with that, I wonder, have you ever heard of Moringa oleifera?
Yes.
Okay,
Can I
what's
tell
your
you a fun
thoughts on
story
that?
about
I'm sorry, what?
I was gonna say, can I tell you a fun story about that one?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I was in Hong Kong,
Uh-huh.
visiting China maybe 3 years ago. And one of the wealthiest men in Hong Kong was in this meeting with myself and business partner. And I asked, and he found out what I do
Huh.
on the health and wellness side. And I asked him of all the things, because I also love traditional Chinese medicine. I think it's a really great arm of medicine that would do us all good to learn a little bit more about it and apply it. And I asked him if he could only choose one thing, what would he choose? And he put his hands in his, he had like a coat pocket right here, and he pulled out seeds and he put them in front of me. And at that point, I'd never seen them from the tree. I'd only seen them in a powder form, post-production on the shelf of Whole Foods. So, for the first time, I'm like tasting it, eating it. And he said that his entire family, it's something that they give to the children when they're very small, all the way up until old age. And I think that in his family, there was centurions for 5 generations, which is a lot. That's saying a lot, that at every turn you have, somebody in that lineage that has lived to be 100 or more. So, and he said that's all he uses. It's just
It's Moringa oleifera.
That's like go-to for everything. He said in the way he phrased it is it's all you need. It does everything.
Wow.
I don't know if I would say that, but
Yeah,
that was his take on it. So yeah,
that's cool.
Right.
I had an acquaintance. I asked the same thing because of where they are located in Africa, and she told me the same thing. She said, "Oh yeah, in third world countries down here, they feed that to their kids all the time because it's packed with so much good stuff." And they said that they use it to treat so many things in those areas, and they call it the never die plant because it can grow like anywhere. And so that's just, once I started doing more research into it, I'm like, wow, this has a lot, kind of like what you've researched with your other supplements and plants was the same kind of thing, just good research coming back from it. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on it, or if you'd heard anything. So
yeah, that one is something that will always stick out in my mind because of that one particular story. But I've heard the same from people in South America and in Africa as well. Anytime you have some type of natural plant or tree or that is resistant to conditions, harsh conditions, dry conditions, temperature conditions, you have to assume, without any real scientific background, that if it's that resilient to external conditions, then there must be something special about this tree or plant that
Mm-hmm.
will also give me the ability to be more resistant to external environmental factors as well. So,
Yeah.
and I agree with what your statement was about having everything that we need. I really do believe that we do have natural sources for everything that we could possibly require. And in some cases, we've been able to extract things and create pharmaceuticals from that. But I think that the body really prefers the whole leaf,
Mm.
or the whole berry or the whole
Mm-hmm.
stem or the whole bark. Like there's synergy in nature that doesn't exist in pharmacy. And
Yep.
it's not to say that there's anything wrong with being very scientific about it and going, well, we think that this is the active component, but to remove that from its synergistic partners, we have to assume that it's also going to remove some of the benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, the whole itself I think there's so much out there, and it goes back kind of to the CBD and the hemp and all that that's starting to be out there more and more. I personally, I think it's the same thing. I think there's benefits to it. I think, but then we come along, we add stuff to it, or we try to use it in incorrect ways. And so just like everything else, but yeah, I mean, because we have cannabis receptors or cannabinoid receptors in our body. So I think God did that for a reason. So,
The
to benefit
whole
us. So,
system. We have a whole endocannabinoid system that's
yep.
built in and around this particular molecule that only has receptors that are there just to line up with that, and then it has this domino effect of all the other systems. It's clearly there for a reason. And
Mm-hmm.
I suppose some people might argue, well, that maybe at some point in time in evolution we needed it, and it's like I feel like it's kind of irrelevant only because if we're just now discovering the endocannabinoid system, then I have a feeling it wasn't just for a time in our past.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's definitely there for a reason. I think we can see a lot of benefits from using it correctly. And so, yeah, it's cool how we're learning, and just like with sleep and the mind and the brain, there's so much more that we don't know yet. It's just, man, I could think and go on about that stuff for so long because it just fascinates me. But, so I guess one question before we kind of start wrapping up is, so someone's brand new to all this holistic health and wellness improvement, where would you have them start? I mean, besides getting the test to see where they're lacking and where they can start, is there anything else that you would suggest that they do?
I would get a trusted advisor.
Okay.
I would do some research on, and that doesn't necessarily, there's not a lot, meaning there's a lot of health coaches.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is it's limited, and you really have to rely on your gut instinct when it comes to that stuff.
Right.
But somebody who can at least speak intelligently to multiple different facets of wellness. Of course, they can always reach out to me. I'm happy to refer them to people that maybe are closer to them or that I happen to know, or I can help them ask the right questions, knowing what to ask. It's just the same way if you were looking for everything from a babysitter to a realtor to a lawyer. There's a way to weed out the ones that are going to be a problem and the ones that are actually going to be of value. So I'm so open to just helping in any way that I can. So I would say that's first, because to try to navigate that yourself, especially in today's world, it's a daunting task, and it's really no wonder why most people give up, because I'm exhausted, and I know the amount of things that I know, so I can't imagine for somebody who's just starting to dip their toe in, how overwhelming that probably feels.
For sure. That's awesome. I think that's definitely a great place to start. Well, before we wrap up, I'd love to ask you just a couple questions that correlate to pencil leadership and get your answers for that. And the first one is, who has impacted your journey to where you are the most? Is there someone that sticks out in your mind?
I think it's hard for me to say that there's any one particular person, because I have been so fortunate to have had many people walk alongside me, right? Whether they knew they were mentoring me or not, whether I knew they were mentoring me or not. And so the best way to answer that question really is to say that we're all being taught all day long by every interaction that we have. So I would say the people that I've met, whether it's a client or it was a doctor, doctors that I liked and doctors that I did not get along with, have both equally mentored me. People who I have coached who were in a really tough place in life and really needed just some hope to get to the next level, watching them and sitting with them in their pain and helping them through that has also mentored me significantly. And then being the one who's going through it, my experiences have mentored me in so many different ways. So it's tough to pull one person out, even in like entrepreneurial stuff. So even in like the starting businesses and setting out on that journey, I didn't really know many women who were doing that at the time. So I didn't have anybody that I could really grab onto and grab information from. That being said, just watching, just being aware of your surroundings and just knowing that, I say this often, that, God really isn't a God that like covers his eyes and like spins around and like, that's my belief anyway.
Yeah.
I don't feel like anything is random. I don't think that anybody, whether they're bagging your groceries or they happen to be somebody that you bumped into in some situation, those are our mentors. They've been set in place, and we've been set in place for others to be that for each other. And so, I just feel like I've just had the ability to be aware of the mentorship that happens as part of being a human being.
I love that. That's such a deep answer, but so true. Like, we can learn from everyone, no matter who they are or what position they're in. I think that's beautiful and something we should all remember as we go day in and day out. And you kind of mentioned at one point, excuse me, doctors you didn't like or didn't get along with. And I know that you had that hard time of being really, really sick with Lyme disease and everything. Looking back through those negatives or those hard times, what would you say is like the one positive that you learned in that situation?
There's so many.
You're right.
The biggest positive of that was to open my eyes to the areas in the industry, to the gaps in the industry, to be able to see, not just with my eyes and my experience, but to know that this was more than just my experience. Other people were experiencing this, and this was like it was an identifying opportunity to see where I could plug in my purpose and gifts that I'd been given and ensure that what my pain and suffering was causing in the moment would be able to be turned into something positive for people in the future. So I just think that it just happens to be positive across the board. It was it was an annoying situation at the time. It was extremely irritating. But man, what happens when your eyes get opened to something that's been done this way forever, but clearly not working, and you go, why do we do it like that? Why hasn't anybody else questioned this? And then you go, oh, that might be me. I might be doing that. And then all of a sudden it just makes sense. And so it's all positive. It's all been a gift to me. I see it that way anyway.
That's awesome. Seeing the silver lining. That's good for sure. So the last one is, so what positive mark, after everything's done here on earth for you, what do you want that positive mark to be for people to see?
Like what's left over from work that I do here?
Yeah. What positive mark do you want to leave on the world?
I would love for people to have a renewed sense of what actually turns the impossible to possible. And that it's not necessarily a complex concept, but rather more simple and, love.
Yeah.
Love will always turn something impossible into something possible. And when there is pure motive and like a real loving standpoint that you take to do things, what possibilities come from that are, I think, unprecedented.
Mm.
And I would love for people to be able to have that perspective in everything that and anything that they do, because I don't know what industry a lot of people will be in. I don't know what their gifts will be, but if they apply that, if they can see anything on my life or see anything in the work that I do, they know that I have a very deep love for people, and that I really want to see them do well. Like, there's nothing more exciting to me than seeing somebody live out their purpose
Yep.
or experience, unabashed joy.
Mm.
And if they see that and that inspires them to apply that to whatever their purpose is, and to let the impossible become possible, I don't know that there's any greater work I might be able to do.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. So thank you so much, Wendi. But before, I know you have a website, and we'll put that on there. Is there any way people can connect with you other than your website?
Instagram is probably
Okay.
the one social media outlet that I'm more on than not. It's just a lot of time, but
Yeah.
I'm on
Right.
there.
Right.
It's I definitely don't follow the rules of how often that I post or anything, but it's at least current.
Right.
So Instagram is, and then of course, but I check it. So if anybody had questions or wanted to reach out there because it's easiest for them, that's a good spot too.
Cool. Awesome. Well, yeah, guys, definitely get connected with Wendi. Just sink into that information she provides and start helping yourselves out there. But Wendi, again, it was great having you on the show today. Learned a lot. So thankful that you stopped by to share with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for what you do for people. I'm sure that they're all, inspired to do impossible things from this as well. So it's fun to team up and do that stuff together.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.